Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, thank you. Yes, we know you're reaching us all the way from Monrovia. This is the fourth election since the end of Liberia's devastating civil war, and it's a critical election because you're looking at, the election producing 15 senators, 73 House of Assembly members, and of course the neck-to-neck, foot-and-foot election debate that has been going on, whether Boakai will take it again this time from a runoff. But first of all, before we get into those narrative, how has it been in Liberia this election period? The processes, has it been peaceful so far?
Okay, thank you again. Happy to join you this morning. Since the election began on that day, 10th of October, up to this moment, there's been some high level of calm because a number of organizations, including our own ECOWAS, has continued to ask us to maintain a high level of decorum, avoiding self-declaration of vote, even celebration. There were some tensions that arose 2 days after the election on the 12th of October. An opposition candidate drew attention to the fact that the CDC, that the President Weah's party, was going to go on the street celebrating victory, and that was the strategy to declare self as winner of the election. And they had already threatened that if the CDC tries it, they will, as an opposition party, mobilize to the streets and everywhere around Liberia to counter them and also celebrate their own victory. And that would have put the Electoral Commission in some level of jeopardy. Like elsewhere across West Africa, there's always that conversation avoiding candidates for self-declaration. Because self-declaration has its own side effect, because once you are excited that you have won an election, eventually the NEC will declare that the election is inconclusive, like we have now, and meanwhile your followers, your supporters are already excited. Those who are already counting ministerial positions, counting appointments, suddenly discover that it is not yet final, and that can result to violence eventually. So the Commission and in fact AU and all of the observer mission has consistently reminded the parties to stay and wait for the final announcement of results. And in fact, the NEC, ahead of the election, has also warned observers, domestic and international, not to declare any elections anywhere, whether on social media or by way of trying to pre-announce results. So, but that we have seen, nothing like that has happened. Everybody is watching the commission to do all the announcements, and once they announce, then people can then take it out. So right now, there's peace in town, nothing has happened. We are, like you said, it's the fourth election, and since that election, since the end of the war, all of the elections has always returned with a runoff, and this is also looking at we're already seeing it, the runoff.
All right, so Austin, this election happened on October 10, really, and today is almost October 17, right, or 18, and there's yet to be a result on the presidential election, and this is a country where you have only about 2.4 million registered voters, and we're also seeing that these two main contenders are following each other neck and neck. Really, I remember the last time you were on this show talking about this Liberian election, you were almost saying that, okay, Boakai may take it this time based on what the feelers you're getting look like. Are you still maintaining that stand now? And what do you think has led to somewhat a long period of election result announcement?
So the way their system works is a bit different from ours. It's a country where you just have one airport, so you don't, unlike in Nigeria, where you can fly in from virtually everywhere to the city, to the capital city, and then present your results at that ICC, where the collation is usually go on. Here you have to go through the terrain, and I remember also telling you that in our last conversation that the terrain in Liberia is a major challenge. In fact, with the rain, there were a lot of disruption to the process. There were some locations where poll did not eventually take place on the 10th of October because the rain impacted on the movement of materials. In fact, in one particular area on their way to the polling location, the rain had to literally impact on the materials. I mean, wet all of the materials, and they needed to cancel that poll and reprint materials that needed to go back to those areas to conduct elections. So just assume that the election ended like 3 or 4 days ago, not like 7 days ago or 8 days ago as we have it by numbers, because there were many locations that polls did not take place. And just also talking about terrain, by the 11th of October, the commission had not even heard from certain locations whether poll had happened on the 10th of October because there was no communication. The communication were literally cut off. Unlike where you have in Nigeria, where you have almost like a national coverage of the mobile network, that isn't the same as we have in Liberia. So there are many issues that impacted on them. Yes, it's a small democracy compared to Nigeria, but there are other things that impact on them. So all of the material has to go by road. No one go by flight. So it's going to be that level of challenge.
Weah is maintaining a slim lead from the figures we have for 3.79% of the vote, and then Boakai 43.49%. What figures are you getting? What exactly should it be, really? Because we understand this is beyond, or rather below the threshold, needed to avoid a second round.
Yeah. So what has happened in that poll is, like I also told you, that Boakai is making a very strong inroad by what was on ground, particularly 2-3 days before the election, about the challenge in that country, particularly when you look at the issues. The issues 6 years ago were back to 2023. Imagine all of the issues that were used to campaign, corruption, good governance, infrastructural development, welfare of people, and all of those were literally back. And people were, so what's the big deal? So we were going to see if that opposition candidate may have a better ground to develop the country. So the guy Boakai just came up so strongly. But we speak, like you said, imagine 43. They are both on 43, 43.70.
Yeah.
70 and 43.65. That's like 0.5 difference. So literally, as at yesterday, by yesterday morning, Boakai was leading by 0.5.
Yep.
But yesterday evening, Weah came up. So, and it's already 92.8% of the votes has been recorded. Don't forget, there are 20 candidates. And the challenge with that election, which of course is what we need to look at, we can also learn from Liberia, even though it's a small democracy. Nigeria can learn from the process in that country. You see what has happened by way of winning an election. You don't just win an election by simple majority because you have the highest number of votes. You need to meet the threshold. 50% plus one. 50% plus one. That makes you the president.
So you're saying that every number counts?
Yes, every number counts. Unlike in Nigeria, where it's literally simple majority, but you have to win 25% of the simple majority in 24 states of the federation. There is no number, there is no threshold in a way. So if 1 million people turn out in the entire federation of Nigeria, then it will be the number of the people who turn out to vote. But it's somehow, if you see what's happening, people have asked me, but that small country, why are they always doing runoff? Because of what it matters. Like Nigeria would have actually gone into runoff. Every data suggests that Nigeria was going to run off. Internationally, national survey, pundits, analysts, everybody thought that the election was going to go to runoff based on historical analysis. But what our commission did, in my opinion, was to hurriedly announce the result and ask people to go to court.
Okay, before we get to that, Austin, I know you're giving the Nigerian dynamics. Let's first, focus on the optics of the Liberian election. Again, you look at the country, the NEC disclosed the progressive results, and they show that 1.3 million, that's 1.355 million valid votes have been tallied so far. And then you have 80,910 invalid votes, being recorded. Now, it seems like, the trailing behind Judge Weah by Boakai is a very slim one. And it's also been identified. I mean, I spoke to Magdala Cooper on the camp of Boakai, a few months ago before the election, and on the Judge Weah side as well. And it seems like the Nimba and the Lofa communities, the constituencies, are two of the largest constituencies in Liberia and seem to be taking the lead for Boakai. And it's also said that that is where Judge Weah seemed to have lost the lead in the terms of percentage. Now, how do we begin to look at this aggregate? Because again, a few seconds into runoff, you might be able to find that, like you said, every number counts. It may seem that Boakai is leading tonight and tomorrow it might be a Judge Weah. How do we look at the aggregates in terms of followership and participation of the citizens and the way the movement of their support is going? I know you're not to predict the election, but in terms of reviewing, citizens' participation, involvement in the election, how did you see that contribute to the winning slides for Boakai or Judge Weah?
So Judge Weah does have an opportunity because we are literally back to 6 years ago. Literally back to 6 years ago. The same form of analysis. Then Judge Weah was in the opposition. Today Judge Weah is the incumbent president. Both of them went into runoff, and eventually Judge Weah clicked it by 61%, Boakai with 38% or thereabouts. So will that repeat itself? I doubt so, because of the issues we just talked about. For Boakai as an opposition candidate to have gotten to this level of neck to neck, while as main candidate, it performed almost the same level as incumbent vice president. What that means is this: as incumbent, you do have a number of appointees who are able to mobilize for your victory. And if those appointees are not able to deliver their area, it's a challenge for you as an incumbent. And that's what we see in Liberia. That apparently, because of the willingness and the consciousness of the Liberia people to vote and defend their vote, that's why you are seeing the level we are, what you're already currently seeing, that Boakai could get to this threshold almost beating an incumbent without any form of incumbent power.
But Austin, what is the trust for the National Election Commission in Liberia? Because I'm asking this because the Democratic Change for Coalition for Democratic Change, the party for Judge Weah, came out to lay accusations on one of the database directors of NEC to say that Reverend Isaac Samuel Zane was a partisan and an apologist that belonged to the camp of Boakai and was asked to step down before the elections in order to bring credibility to the process. I mean, we hear this kind of scenarios in Nigeria, so I'm not surprised. But, in terms of trust for the commission by the citizens, just like we see here in Nigeria, what is the level of trust?
Well, at the beginning, before the election, there was some form of, the same like you just argued or you just stated. Before the election, there's always that mutual distrust. It's everywhere, particularly electoral management body. All over Africa, electoral management body usually are faced with a number of disinformation, targeted misinformation to try to draw attention. Sometimes the opposition will tell you they are doing it to put pressure on them not to do the wrong thing. Sometimes when they do that, in a way to try not for the electoral commission not to do the wrong thing, they create another scenario which is not good for the system. But for the NEC has gradually met up to the demand side of the things they said they will do, and they've been open, they've been communicating, which is very critical. Communication is important. But before the election, there were certain gaps with communication. But once the election started, particularly the next day, you could hear every kind of detail, what was happening, how it was happening, the expectation coming down because of the relevant information. Yes, for now, there's a kind of trust with the commission, So when you talk about CDC accusing commission, that again may be a strategy. That's supposed to be an incumbent party who have done all the appointments. But there's a flip side. You would have heard that George Weah has been credited with a comment to ECOWAS during the Niger coup that why are you blaming this invasion by the military when we allow democratic coup? Now you are angry or military coup. That if we strengthen democratic systems, there will not be military coup. I think that's what George Weah has done. We haven't really seen any form of accusation that George Weah is interfering. And I think I'm not seeing that. You are building the trust in the commission. And everybody can truly see the numbers as they are coming, that sincerely it is neck to neck. Or the accusation that one party, particularly CDC, was going to go out on the street to begin to celebrate, has been countered by historical evidence. That has not happened. Today is the 18th of October, 8 days after election. And there is no such thing. George Weah has not made any pronouncement about victory, and the numbers are clearly coming out clearly. We don't know what the runoff may produce, but sincerely, there's a high level of trust in the commission right now.
All right, so let's look at the issues that shaped conversation, in the days running to this election. We talked about it a bit the last time we had you on this issue. Now, it's, interesting to see that Boakai is 78 and George Weah is 57. It would seem like the age of Boakai didn't much form a part of the conversation this time, going by the results we are seeing so far.
So, you see, and I told you last time that it's becoming like age doesn't matter in our African or West African electoral jurisprudence, because what people want is delivery. Can you deliver? 6 years ago, the trust was on Weah because they saw him fresh. He was coming in, no baggage. He had only been senator. He is known remarkably as an international footballer who has brought pride to the country. But today, the narrative is not the same. He's had his own fair share, 6 years. Now, the people can talk about the level of corruption, that there has not been improvement in infrastructure. In fact, the welfare of citizens is back to where they were. More than 50% of people living below poverty line. And so it's not like you have been tested. You have been tested. Right now, both have been literally tested, even though Boakai was vice president, so former Madam President, but it was tested. People would have seen the kind of action or the things he did while vice president or while being minister on that door some years ago. But in all honesty, both of them have been tested, and that, I think, is the reason for the threshold we are seeing. I am already foreseeing, based on conversation, informal conversation ongoing on the street, that there's a likelihood that opposition candidates may zero in and support Boakai if a runoff eventually happens. Because it's already certain that a runoff is going to happen sometime, I think, a week or two from today.
All right, so let's look at the fact that there have been some, perhaps, I would say, concerns from the EU. I mean, some of the observers say that George Weah used state resources to fund, to have a political advantage in this election as against, what would have been given to Boakai because he's in the opposition. Now, in terms of these kinds of outcome from international observers, making this kind of commentaries before elections are finalized, what is the con and what is the pro in it? Because again, you just mentioned that they said people should watch their guard, be patient until the runoff is announced and elections are announced. However, these leading kinds of outcomes from observers, does it also instigate concern?
Yes, it does. It does. I think that making those commentaries, it tends to have an impact on the candidate of George Weah. But again, they should understand that George Weah had no state resources 6 years ago. Boakai did. And George Weah won 6 years ago. So it is not about your state resources. In any case, there is really no legal framework, unlike you have in Europe, in the US, for example. In the US, as an American president, sitting president running for an election, every cost counts. if you use state resources, it counts against you. But in our landscape, we see presidential candidates who are sitting president using our own efforts, one, to go everywhere around the country, or using the state vehicle, state fuel, because as president, he can claim that he's not going for campaign, that he's going to visit a particular location, whereas that location eventually turned out to be campaign ground. So I think comment from the EU or any other international observer group making an assertion that suggests some form of support to opposition candidates is e-thought, should be highly condemned. What is happening, you may have condemned that before the election, not necessarily now that we are in the process of the election, because we are still in the process of election. Election has not been announced, concluded, that we are now, the commission has not formally made a comment that we are going for a runoff. Data is already telling us, only telling us that with 92% of total votes already announced, that there's a threshold that both of them are 43, you still need 7%. You need 7% of the vote. Are you going to say that one of them will just claim all of the 7 votes? No, it won't happen. Don't forget we have 18 other candidates who are getting 1, 2, 3, 2 votes, 3 votes. But I also have a challenge with that 20 number. And I think Liberia should do well by really doing a pre-election analysis ahead of election and try to weigh out those numbers, particularly numbers that you know cannot even get up to 100 votes in a general election, should not be contesting a major election.
All right, Austin, I mean, in the wake and the lead of the campaign, I think in the first or second week of September, I think 15th precisely, we saw the Boakai camp led by Magdala Cooper, who was the director for finance, and she was on live television, I think, in even some parts of Nigerian network. And, you know, there were videos showing George Weah during his campaign making insidious statements like, you know, if this election is rigged, we will definitely be seeing caskets amongst other things. And, you know, we've had similar rhetorics in Nigerian elections. The blood of the baboon will flow, you know, yada, yada, yada. We see that a lot. But what is the danger of this? Because we are going into a runoff. There, I mean, uneasy lies ahead, but there is an uneasy calm as well. And whichever party leads in the outcome of the runoff, whether Boakai or George Weah, there will be, you know, consequences on both sides. One is the fact that, I mean, the person who leads takes over, but then how will the opposition take it, or who leads? Now, if George Weah mentions statements like there will be caskets if this election is rigged, and happens to lose this election, what will be the dangers for his followers taking this up an action plan?
You again stated the obvious, that it, like I just said a minute ago, is a pressure. Come on, we are watching you. If this election is rigged, we are going to. They will do really nothing. They will do nothing. The truth is a necessary pressure. Weah's comment may be political because he wants to also tell his people that I have no hand in manipulating the elections, but the election must not be rigged. I will not interfere. That's a positive angle to say don't rig the election because I will not manipulate it. But using casket go beyond a gentleman's agreement or a gentleman that we know George Weah is for. But again, it's an assurance that Weah is not interfering in the process. And we assume it's not doing that from behind the scenes. We assume it's not going to counter his own word of engaging in a democratic coup. And that's something I need all of us to understand, that Liberia is going to be teaching West Africa some lessons, even though George Weah will eventually win, because the data we have to show. What has happened clearly is that the commission will need to be consistent with its communication. That is a hallmark, communication. Letting people know where votes had happened, where votes had not happened, the cancelled vote. If you are returning back to those areas, you are letting people know, unlike in other democracy where you cancel votes and nobody talk about the cancel vote. You just move on as if nothing happened. Nobody talked about that the election did not hold in certain areas. Here in Liberia, they are telling you that the election did not hold in XYZ location because of the rain, and we are returning there. Clear statement. People's hope that, oh good, after all, You could have used the strategy, understanding that the location is a stronghold of a political candidate, and just assume that nothing happened and go ahead to declare the election results, saying that all of the results are now in. And then there's violence in the country. Yes, the country, just like learning from country like Sierra Leone, their neighbor, who had also gone through war, who understand what it means not to return back to the dark days of conflict. So they are managing this scenario very effectively. And I think I need to, outside of the word casket, I need to, at this time, really thank the people of Liberia, appreciate them for not engaging in all of those manner that we see elsewhere, particularly in our own country, where there are too many threats. Babu, bags, body bags, and all of those commentary. They are injurious to our electoral landscape. They are not good. They don't make any sense. So if you lose election and the data is sufficient enough to justify that you actually lose election, don't forget that parties actually know they lost election, or parties should know when they lose election, because the landscape provides you the opportunity as a party to deploy party agents across the various precincts. In Liberia, for example, every voting precinct, you should have your party agent there. 8 days after, you should already know whether you are winning an election or not. Because by now, just the same way NEC is collating results and announcing those results, you as a party should collate your results. The only difference is that you are not announcing them. That's the only difference. You cannot announce because you don't have the mandate to announce. When results are cancelled for maybe obvious reasons, maybe manipulation, invalid vote or thereabout, it should have been settled at the precinct. Once the result leaves the precinct, no cancellation should happen. Unlike elsewhere, particularly at home, where you can win election at the polling unit level and lost the election at the counting processes, at the collation process, particularly when you carry the papers from the party, from the polling unit to the ward locations and to the local government, before you know what's happening, all of the votes are getting reduced by cancellation. Obvious cancellation, sometimes unexplained cancellation, whereas the people who voted in polling units are hopeful that they won, and they are posting the results everywhere with the assurance that those results are counted, unknown to them that the results they are holding in their hand have been cancelled. And there's no evidence, no publication to show that polling unit 1, ward 1, local government 1, state 1, that polling unit have been cancelled. Those evidences are lacking. And that's what I see happening in Liberia that is different. That this small democracy can teach the bigger democracy in the region.
Yes, small democracy teaching bigger democracies in the region. Quite interesting. On the pages of newspaper today, we saw INEC already complaining that in the off-cycle elections, there are a number of litigations already, pre-poll, litigations, which is, kind of a disturbing trend for polls. And it will seem like that is not the situation in Liberia. But we thank you very much, Austin, for always being there each time we call on you. You oblige us, and we do not take that for granted. International election observer Austin Aigbe has joined us to look at the Liberian presidential election, giving us update. He is in, I think in Monrovia. Okay, no, he moved from Monrovia to Freetown. So he's been going all over the place, giving us updates on what is happening in Liberia. Austin, thank you so much.